Paul Tillich once said, "Being religious means asking passionately the question of the meaning of our existence, and being willing to receive answers, even if the answers hurt." Religion is one of the most powerful unifiers on the planet. Globally, 84% of adults and children identify with a religious group.
Humans are religious, even when they might not recognize the truth of that statement. Throughout history, various religious beliefs have arisen as people try to explain who or what is behind the universe. They also want to figure out why they are here. Is there a purpose in this life? This series on world religions seeks to showcase the variety of answers to those questions. But in doing so, we must begin at the beginning with another question. How does one define a religion? Now, definitions are really always important. Without these kind of definitions, we may not be talking about the same thing. This is also true with the word religion. So there have been several attempts to define religion, dictionary type attempts. I'll give you a few of those. First of all, the belief in, reverence for a supernatural power or powers, regarded as creating and governing the universe. In addition to that, a particular variety of such belief, especially when organized into a system of doctrine and practice. So there's the belief, and then there's the carrying of the belief into a practice of some kind. Another definition says a set of beliefs, values, and practices based on the teachings of a spiritual leader. Perhaps a personal set or institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices that has more of a commitment and a devotion aspect to it. It isn't just something you believe necessarily in your head, but there's a true commitment, there's a real devotion. Another definition says it's a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe, especially when considered as the creation of a superhuman agency or agencies, usually involving devotional and ritual observances, and often containing a moral code governing the conduct of human affairs. So the moral side of it is introduced as well. Another definition says a specific fundamental set of beliefs and practices generally agreed upon by a number of persons or sects, and something that one believes in and follows devotedly, a point or matter of ethics or conscience. So there's the morality angle again, and with the conscience involved. Now, as you look at all these definitions, I think there are some things that are common features in the definitions. First of all, a belief in a god or gods. Secondly, a belief that the universe came into being through a God, that there is a purpose in this creation. Third, a devotion to the deity or deities. And fourth, adherence to a moral code and certain practices that are connected to one's beliefs. Now, two aspects of the definitions were more expansive, didn't necessarily incorporate a deity, but I don't want to really include those. Okay? These more general definitions leave the door open for possibly including atheism and or agnosticism. And people will say, well, shouldn't those be included? But the question is, are those really religious beliefs? Atheism is basically a negation of religion. Agnosticism says one cannot know anything for sure. And so skepticism becomes the cornerstone of this thing that we call agnosticism. They're not sure about religious truth. Therefore, neither atheism nor agnosticism will be part of this series on world religions, even though they may lead to certain worldviews. Now, most worldviews are based on religious beliefs. They naturally flow out of what we believe is ultimate reality. In a previous series on worldviews, I covered significant worldviews that have shaped history. It's important to repeat a good definition of worldview from the Christian theologian and philosopher Francis Schaeffer. Schaeffer said the following. He said, "People have presuppositions, and they will live more consistently on the basis of these presuppositions than even they themselves may realize. By presuppositions, we mean the basic way an individual looks at life, his basic worldview, the grid through which he sees the world. I like that phrase he uses, the grid through which he sees the world. We kind of look through this, and when we kind of analyze everything through that very grid. He also goes on to say, presuppositions rest upon that which a person considers to be the truth of what exists, Schaeffer continues. People's presuppositions lay a grid for all they bring forth into the external world. Their presuppositions also provide the basis for their values and therefore the basis for their decisions. Schaeffer makes another very interesting point when he says, as a man thinketh, so is he. He says it's really most profound. An individual is not just the product of the forces around him. He has a mind, he has an inner world. Yet, he goes on to say, most people catch their presuppositions from their family and surrounding society the way a child might catch measles. Here's a legitimate question. Do people's religious beliefs stem merely from the place where they happen to be born? Would they have believed differently if they had a different background and different influences? What part does this thing called free will play in decisions about what to believe? Christian writer and apologist C.S. Lewis was an atheist as a young man. He took the view that religious belief was simply a matter of where one was born and raised. In his youthful thinking, he wrote to a friend about his conclusion at that time. He said, "You ask me my religious views. You know I think that I believe in no religion. There is absolutely no proof for any of them. And from a philosophical standpoint, Christianity is not even the best. All religions, that is, all mythologies, to give them their proper name, are merely man's own invention. Often, too," Lewis continued, "great men were regarded as gods after their death. Thus, after the death of a Hebrew philosopher, Yeshua, whose name we have corrupted into Jesus, he became regarded as a god. A cult sprang up, which was afterwards connected with the ancient Hebrew Yahweh worship, and so Christianity came into being. One mythology among many, but the one that we happen to have been brought up in." Now, in his autobiography, Surprised by Joy, Lewis summarized his attitude toward God in this way. He said, "I was at this time living, like so many atheists or anti-theists, in a whirl of contradictions. I maintained that God did not exist. I was also very angry with God for not existing. I was equally angry with him for creating a world." Now, Lewis did find his way back to the faith that his culture accepted, but he did so only after a long struggle in his own mind. So when he came back, it wasn't due to what he had learned previously, but rather in spite of it. Yet how many follow the path that Lewis trod? How many genuinely question what their culture teaches and end up with beliefs contrary to that culture? While free will exists, experience seems to indicate that most will follow, whether sincerely or simply to get along, they will follow what their culture expects of them. In this video series, I am speaking from within my Christian faith and the worldview that does emanate from that faith. Yet I've also had to think and rethink what I believed in my early years, so I can understand personally that inner struggle that people might have. The goal in this series is to explain the essentials of many of the world's religions in as objective a manner as possible, ending with the one that I do accept, the Christian faith, and its many varieties. Now, Lewis also said in his seminal book, Mere Christianity, "If you are a Christian, you do not have to believe that all the other religions are simply wrong all through. If you are a Christian, you are free to think that all these religions, even the queerest ones, contain at least some hint of the truth." And he continued, "But of course, being a Christian does mean thinking that where Christianity differs from other religions, Christianity is right and they are wrong. As in arithmetic," Lewis continues, "there is only one right answer to a sum, and all other answers are wrong. But some of the wrong answers are much nearer being right than others." So he goes on and connects to paganism, actually. So we will begin by looking at paganism in its various forms, especially the polytheism of the ancient world. Then we will examine the third largest religion, Hinduism, and note its influence on India and even in Western civilization. Buddhism is closely allied with Hinduism, but it deserves separate treatment after our session on Hinduism. The Shinto faith in traditional Japanese culture will follow Buddhism. Then we will focus on the monotheistic religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. When discussing Christianity, we will cover the essentials that all Christians agree upon, but then note the divisions within the faith: Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, and more recent developments. I hope you will come along with me on this journey, perhaps do some thinking and or rethinking with respect to what you have been told is true. If there is a God, and I believe there is, we will all have to answer to him ultimately for what we believed. We need to have good reasons for where we have ended up, not simply what we were taught as children. As a Christian, I will end this introduction with one passage from the Bible that speaks to me about this. Always be prepared to give a defense to everyone who asks you the reason for the hope that is in you, but respond with gentleness and respect. That is what I seek to do as we examine the world's religions.